is our story about our amazing Grace.
BWS is short for Beckwith Wiedemann syndrome.
Beckwith Wiedemann syndrome. Yeah, it is Wiedemann.
It's a long one, so we call it BWS for short. Where do we start with Grace? So we'd been actively trying for a few months, and one day I was like, I don't feel right, I'm going to do a test. And I gave the test to Nick, and then I left for work.
We were trying for quite a few months, probably about a year, and we'd had 2 miscarriages in that time. We have got a child each from previous relationships, both healthy, both fine.
We went for a 7-week reassurance scan due to the miscarriages prior, and everything that they found was fine. It was normal for how small she was, so we was happy. We started telling people everything was fine, and then we went for our 12-week scan. I knew from the get-go that there was something not right. She was taking longer, she kept in and out of the room, and I kept saying to Nick, like, something's not right. We had to go into a separate room.
Oh, it was horrible. We was sat in there waiting a good half hour, 40 minutes, not knowing what was going on.
But it felt hours. And then we had the consultant come in and sit down and explain to us that our baby had exomphalus or omphalocele,
which we didn't have a clue. So he drew a diagram on a bit of paper, showed us the different types, whether it was a umbilical hernia or it was the exomphalus that Grace had, where it's in its own sac, where when the fetus is forming, the belly cavity doesn't quite fully close up, so that it's able to grow outside.
Yeah, so it was a lot to take in. We got offered termination quite a few times, which me and Nick didn't even talk to each other about. We both just said no, we're not doing that. And then they offered me a CVS test to check for Downs, Edwards, spina bifida, and all sorts of things. Like some things that I can't even pronounce. And one of them was BWS. And we had to wait about 4 weeks. We had to wait for the results, and I drove myself crazy. I think I must have rung the hospital every day, pretty much, asking for the results. And when they finally come, they were negative for everything. So me and Nick got our head round that it's just the exomphalus that we were dealing with. And then we kind of got ready to have a baby, and deal with a baby that was going to have surgery within a few months of it being born and stuff like that. So we were never worried about nothing else.
So we had to have more scans done, didn't we, than usual?
I think we had a scan every month.
It felt like we was there every week.
Yeah.
There was a lot. There was quite a few warnings about her being small when she was born. We was told that they would plan to deliver at 38 weeks and that she'd be about 5.5 pounds. She'd be a bit on the small side. Obviously getting all this information, they did keep saying though, babies with exomphalus, it's hard to accurately measure the size of the baby because her bowel's outside. It's a lot harder to measure and estimate the size, but they said from data that they've got, it's shown that she'd be about 5.5 pounds.
I think I must have been about 8 months pregnant, and they told me to go to St Thomas's up in London to have an MRI done, just to have an overall check on everything, to check mainly like baby's lungs was developing okay and things like that they couldn't see on a normal ultrasound scan. So I had that done. That all come back fine, and then they then invited me up to King's College Hospital in London, where I had planned to deliver Grace. Yeah, so I had that done, and then the weeks were passing, and I thought I need to get my head around this exomphalus. Found a few support pages on Facebook, which were so helpful. All families all over the world, but mainly in America. And I just done more research into what comes with exomphalus, and I come across stuff to do with BWS, and I thought, I haven't really heard about that as much as some of the other things that they're talking about. And
you
I
said
just,
it just stood out to you.
yeah, and I was like, and I put it to the back of my mind, but I thought, no, that it just wouldn't go. And no one's mentioned it when we went to the hospital appointment, so I thought, oh, maybe it's just in my head. Like, we'll just see how it goes. I then went into labour shortly after the King's visit. At 32 weeks, I went into labour, and they gave Grace lung steroids in case she did come that early, but they managed to stop it. However, I don't know how, but they managed to stop it.
It's clever what they can do nowadays.
But it was very, very scary.
A couple of weeks later, enough was enough and Grace wanted out. So she was born at 36 weeks. She came into this world at £7, not the £5.5 that they was expecting. I think she was only at Medway with us for about an hour and a half.
I mean, you saw her longer than I did. He got her first cuddle as well. I didn't get to see her. Very briefly, I saw her before she went up to King's. I noticed that she had like the birthmark on her head and on her eyelids. I noticed her tongue, and straight away, panicking, BWS.
The only thing really on my mind, how are we going to do this? How are we going to bath her? How are we going to
Dress her. Change her nappy.
Yeah.
Just basic.
It was just crazy. But anyway, yeah. So she went up to King's. You had a bit of a nightmare in the recovery ward, didn't you? Well, we won't go into that.
We're not scared too much.
There was a few dramas.
There was a blip.
It's got nothing to do with BWS, for example. It's just the part and parcel of it.
Seems to be our luck.
I went into the NICU. Straight away I clocked Grace. She was the second incubator in on the left as we walked in. Mum was with me that morning, my mum, and no quicker as I sat down and held her hand, I had this whole medical team around me wanting to take her down to do her surgery, and I couldn't get hold of Alex. And when I did finally get hold of her, she's in surgery.
And I was like, what? No.
Yeah.
We was told like potentially 3 months' time, not less than 24 hours.
I'll never forget the surgeon, and she just kept saying to me, she'll be okay, I'll have her back to you, she'll be okay, don't worry, she'll be fine. And she said, have you got any concerns going forward? All the pictures I've seen of babies that have had the exomphalus repair or surgery, they've got a whacking great scar up their belly. And she said, I'll see what I can do. I'm sure, I've had a look, I'm positive that I can probably give her a belly button. We'd gone down with Grace and the surgical team and gone as far with them as we could, and that's when we left. And then when we come back, we managed to meet up as they was wheeling her back out to take her back up on the NICU. Yeah, and then you finally got to come up and see her on
day 3. So she was born on the Friday. Saturday, Nick had to deal with all the surgery and stuff like that, and I tried my best to get out of hospital, but I just, after a cesarean,
and the complications that followed.
Yeah, it wasn't happening. So Sunday nurse come round and said, do you want to go? Because they knew Grace was up at King's, and she didn't even get to finish what she was saying. I was like, I'm going home. So I pretty much discharged myself. Once I got up there, Nick was like, brace yourself, she's going to be in an incubator, she's got wires and tubes and stuff, but like, it's okay, she's fine. Like I said, I'd already been up there, so I knew what the place looked like, but seeing your baby in an incubator, I can't even describe. It's completely, you cannot prepare yourself for it. And you're just constantly like, what's that? And then you finally get used to, that's what that means, and this is what that means. And
for the first week, plenty of abdominal x-rays, chest x-rays, because I was worried about the pressure on the heart and lungs, so I wanted to make sure that was alright. Normally you have a
cannula
put in your, I was going to say catheter. You
No,
don't have one of them.
That's the
wrong
thing.
place. cannula in your hand. Well, she had a cannula in each hand, and she also had something called a long line or a central line, which is the one that goes in through the vein or artery in your neck, which goes down. They insert it, they have to measure it out, and it goes all the way down to the heart. Got quite interesting getting her out for a cuddle.
Oh, there was wires everywhere.
I think by the end of the first week, we kind of mastered it.
Yeah, we weren't bothered. The day went on, and the more I looked at her, the more markers that I found for BWS. And I kept saying to Nick, she's got this mark on her head, she's got a large tongue, and there's like a little crease on her earlobe. And I kept saying about her weight. On one of the support groups on Facebook, when Grace was born, when I was sitting in hospital on my own, I put a picture up of Grace on the support group saying, she's arrived, like all these scan pictures everyone's been seeing of her, she's finally here, she's gone in for a surgery, blah blah blah. And one of the mums commented saying, you need to get her tested for BWS. And at first I was really angry because I was like, the doctor said that she didn't have BWS.
They did do a test.
They done a
which
test.
Come back negative. I was believing the doctors because we'd had a test while she was pregnant, then we'd had a test when Grace was born, and they'd all come back negative for anything. They sent off further testing to a lab in Exeter, which come back positive. So she has the 11p15. She's in the 20%, I believe. There are two other types. One's more common, around 50%, and there's one lesser, but she's in the sort of mid-range to rare category of BWS from our understanding. So with regards to things like aftercare with surgery, she had an NG tube, which is a tube that goes in through the nose, down into the stomach. They passed her feeds in through that. Obviously she had the IV and other fluids to supplement what she wasn't getting from a bottle or from mum. Again, a situation arose out of our control, which stopped her getting her feeds from mum, so we had to rely on bottle formula milk, and there was a few issues there.
But anyway, we found that man bottles helped with Grace with her larger tongue. What's it called?
Bottles. Macroglossia.
Well done. So
did I get it right?
Yeah. Oh. So we're learning all these long words.
Yeah. Only a few.
Yeah.
Some of them I've got no hope.
Man bottles work best for Grace. I mean, every baby's different. It's all trial and error. Even with a baby that hasn't got
macroglossia. That come with a bit of research. It seems that a lot of babies, not just with BWS, but with enlarged tongues, it's more comfortable and it's easier for them to make a seal around the bottle teat. Otherwise, it just runs out the side of their mouth.
It still did with Grace. That still did happen.
But with Grace, she also has soft larynx. It's an immaturity, so she's noisier when she breathes and when she feeds. She used to sound
horrendous. Sounded like a squeaky toy.
Yeah, sometimes like a seagull.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was an extra thing to worry about.
Just to add on.
She was transferred back to Medway. The best thing about her being transferred back to Medway was her sister got us here, which was quite emotional. And you were supposed to read this bit, but you're welling up.
Took it up.
You're welling up. We actually had the whole ward, all the staff that were on the ward, were in floods of tears because they said it was the cutest thing. And everyone says stuff like that, but you could see that they was genuine. It had them in bits.
Baby Grace. Baby Grace.
But yeah, it was quite amazing to see. Matilda, she's 4 years old. And the whole way through the pregnancy, she was like, "Don't worry, Mum. Don't worry, Nick. She'll be fine. I know she'll be fine." And she was just so made up, wasn't she, that she was finally allowed to see her. Different roles, different hospital. So.
Yes, sister got to meet sister. Sorry. She had a hearing test done, like every newborn does. That was okay.
Passed it with flying colours.
Of course she did.
She don't get her hearing from me, she gets it from her mother. Do you say something?
And then sleep study she had to have because she had slight sleep apnea.
Yes.
She liked to hold her breath. So yeah, sleep study come back okay. That was more for our reassurance for her to come home. We had the salts team come out to help with feeding, showed me how to feed Grace. Oh, what do they called it? Was it
Sideline feeding?
sideline feeding? Well done, Nicholas. Yes, so you had your knees elevated on a stool, I had a pillow on my knees and had her onto her side so she could feed, breathe a lot more easier. If there was any like loose formula she didn't swallow, she could just dribble out. She was just a lot more comfortable feeding like that, and I still do it now, 6 months on.
I've tried feeding Grace the same way
He
as
can't
Alex
do it.
feeds her. She'd rather be held either in the normal position or sat upright, and she tucks her head right underneath here, and I have to sort of feed her that way.
Underneath your beard. So yeah, everyone's different. I mean, it was
Every
a godsend
baby's
for me, and it works for me and Grace. Yeah, and then she finally come home on her due date.
So little under 5 weeks in hospital. So not quite the 5 months we
were planning
was
originally.
first told.